anything plugged in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for your patience. We're having trouble with our sound system. I'd like to welcome everyone this morning, and please join me in a moment of silence to remember the prisoners of war, the missing in action, and honor those who have served and are serving this great nation's armed services. At this time, I would like everyone to join in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all for coming and joining us here today. Right now across the country at more than 2,200 memorial sites like this one, we are gathered as one nation to remember, honor, and teach. We are all proud to be Americans that live in a free society made up of many people from many walks of life. The freedoms we enjoy today have not come without a price. Laying here before us in cemeteries throughout this nation are men and women who gave their lives so that we can live in freedom without fear. We can worship as we see fit. We can raise our children to believe as we do. We can travel from one end of this great nation to the other and not have to ask permission to go. We are free to vote for whomever we feel should be in government offices with no explanations needed. We have the right to succeed and we have the right to fail at whatever endeavor we wish to pursue. The United States of America was founded on the ideals of freedom, justice, and equality. Our nation stands as a shining beacon of liberty and freedom to the world. We thank those who gave their lives to keep us free, and we shall not forget you. We shall remember. Today, many of you here are veterans of wars and conflicts that America has had to fight to protect the innocent and oppressed. This nation has always been the first to stand up for the freedom of people from around the world. Many of you here today have answered that call and served your country well. We are here today to say thank you, and we are honored to know you. There are many men and women serving today in all branches of the military, here at home and in places far away, that most of us have never heard of. These men and women are part of the best trained, best equipped force in the world. We honor them and their families for the sacrifices they make each day to keep our country safe from terrorism, hatred, and injustice. Quoting our 40th President Ronald Reagan, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States, where men were free. Today we show a united front of gratitude and respect across the United States of America as we remember the fallen, honor those who serve, and teach our children the value of freedom. I would like to introduce our first guest speaker today, Colonel David C. White, a U.S. Army veteran. Colonel White grew up in Conneaut Lake and is often remembered locally for his accomplishments in high school sports. In 1970, he was recruited by Army head coach Bobby Knight to play basketball at West Point. He graduated from West Point and was commissioned a second lieutenant in field artillery. Subsequently, he served 25 years on active duty and commanded units at the company, battalion, and brigade levels. Moreover, he served as Chief of Staff, Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and Secretary, Joint Chief of Joint Staff in Washington, D.C. In addition, Colonel White earned a master's degree from the University of South Carolina and a master's degree in national security strategy from the prestigious National War College in our nation's capital. A highly decorated Army officer, Colonel White received numerous awards to include 3 Legion of Merit, 6 Meritorious Service Medals, and a parachutist badge. Please join me in welcoming Colonel David C. White, U.S. Army retired.
Thank you, Donna, and I'm just absolutely thrilled to be here today, and I want to thank you all, the children, parents, grandparents, for coming out today to do those 3 things that Donna mentioned. Remember our fallen heroes. Remember and honor those serving and those that have served. And then equally important to teach that to our children today by sharing the stories about our veterans and our servicemen and women, and letting the children know that we are the land of the free and the home of the brave because of the sacrifices made in many, many conflicts since this nation began. My introduction to veterans was right in a close by town, Conneaut Lake. When I was 5 years old, I lived across the street from Memorial Park, and in that park there was a memorial statue that was in place in 1866 to recognize 16 soldiers that gave it all during the Civil War that were from the Conneaut Lake area. And I would play on the memorial playground or in the park, and I was allowed to get on the cannon and allowed to play, but I was never allowed to get near the statue because that was called hallowed ground. I didn't know what that really meant. It took me years to understand it, but I understand it now, and I think about those 16 soldiers every time I drive past. My first introduction to other veterans was my first day at West Point. The first day I got there, they gave us a uniform. We marched past MacArthur Barracks, and there was a statue of General MacArthur. We went the other way, there was General Eisenhower and Eisenhower Barracks, and that's where my room was. And then we ate in General George Washington's mess hall, Washington Hall. And then we marched at the end of the day to Trophy Point, and we looked over the Hudson River and looked at Trophy Point, and from left to right was the plaques and statues of our nation's history. I knew that I was in a very special place when I rose my hand to support and defend the Constitution of this great nation. And it stuck with me forever, that it was because of veterans that I had a lot to learn, and I would begin listening and get the lessons learned. My first opportunity and privilege to command American troops was in Germany, at the Iron Curtain, in the Fulda Gap with the 8th Infantry Division, which had a tremendous history in World War II. The story about soldiers that I remember so clearly when I first got there was during World War II, we had recaptured a city from the Germans and put it back into French hands. And the mayor of the city said to the commanding general of the 8th Division, show me your credentials so that we can conduct this ceremony. And he turned to his soldiers behind him and he told the mayor, these are my credentials. These are my credentials. I'll never forget that story that I was told. It stuck with me. In the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, our mission was to go to Korea if North Korea invaded South Korea and reestablish the DMZ. So my mission was to figure out how I would take my battalion there by ship and by air, link them up in Busan and move forward to reestablish wherever that DMZ was. The first thing I did was get the opportunity to talk to vets who were in the Korean conflict and had served in Korea since the mid-1950s and knew the terrain. They knew the avenues of approach. They knew everything about it. And as a young battalion commander, my duty was to listen and take the lessons learned. In Brigade Command, I did it at Fort Sill, and our unit had a history, a very in-depth history with Vietnam. They understood fire-based construction. They understood jungle warfighting. They understood small unit patrolling. They knew what they were doing. And to lead American soldiers, leaders had to understand what we did in wars till now and what we could do in the future with our new technology. At the War College, I was privileged to do a 2-week study of Normandy from the left flank to the right flank, the 5 American landing sites on the beaches, and visit the American Cemetery. And then we had people that actually participated tell us what it was like to be a soldier, a sailor, an airman, participating in that very famous D-Day invasion. Quite remarkable. And lastly, the day I retired from the Pentagon, and before I took off the uniform and said goodbye, I went up to Arlington and looked over Foggy Bottom and the Pentagon, which they built in 22 months, and it houses 26,000 people that work every day to help keep this nation the land of the free and the home of the brave, and said thank you to our veterans. I'm just inspired today to see all of you out there today remembering our fallen veterans, honoring those who serve, and sharing stories with your children about why this nation is such a great nation and our best days are ahead of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel White. I would like to now introduce our second guest speaker, White and Rich Anton. He has been a professional radio broadcaster since 1978. He has worked locally here in Crawford County with Forever Media since 2004. Rich hosts the Rocky Morning Show weekdays from 6 to 10. He also is a local business owner and operator for the last 15 years as master instructor at Flying Tiger Martial Arts in Meadville's downtown mall. Rich is a father of 2 adult children. He and his bride, Suzanne, will be celebrating their 27th wedding anniversary on Christmas Eve with a roaring fire in a house full of 4-legged kids. Rich is a lifelong passionate supporter of our men and women serving in the armed forces as well as our veterans, coming from a family rich in impressive military service and heartbreaking sacrifice. Listen to his Voices for Vets feature on the Rocky Morning Show weekday mornings at 8:30. As he always reminds his listeners, our military personnel have our backs. We as a community are obligated to have theirs.
Thank you very much, Donna, and thank you for the invitation from the VFW Post 7842, the auxiliary, and the Linesville community, and the Linesville Cemetery Association. When I first got this, I have a speech written, and I'm just kind of wing it a little bit, because As the Colonel was mentioning, and first of all, I'm just honored and privileged and humbled to be even sharing a microphone with Colonel White. So, and being surrounded by these awesome representations of our United States military. So I'm humbled to be here. All the veterans in attendance here, we thank you for your service. I am not a veteran. I just want to make that clear, first of all. Everybody says, well, I thought you were a vet. I'm not a veteran, but I am a lifelong advocate for making sure that the stories of our veterans are told and that we always honor our fallen and honor those who are serving, and certainly keep that knowledge of what the real cost of freedom and sacrifice is about. And there are examples of all three of those lying in rest here at Linesville Cemetery. I'm anxious, what I was going to drift upon is because what Colonel White was saying about how many young people are here. And that is what my purpose of speaking today is all about. I am, in my family, the go-to person about getting knowledge about family members who served in the military. Because I didn't serve, I also had an extraordinary passion to find out more about those who did. And when I was a kid, I didn't really pay that much attention. I always knew about there was uncles and grandfathers who served in the war, but I was a little kid, I didn't think about much until I became a little bit more aware. And when I started becoming more aware as a teenager, as I see teenagers out here, I started wanting to ask more questions, but unfortunately a lot of those men and women had already passed away, and I lost that opportunity to talk to them, to really engage with them about their experiences from their own lips. I did, however, have the opportunity to have two people in my life really solidify why I'm an advocate for our veterans and our active duty military. I had a grandfather who served in World War I. I had a pap, 4 uncles, a stepdad, 2 father-in-laws who served in World War II. All but one survived. And I had a stepbrother who served in Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War. All the branches of the military were represented in my family, which, again, started paying more attention to those kinds of things. My late grandmother was a Gold Star mother. Didn't find out more about that story until she had passed away. Because she was much older. When I was younger, she was very frail as I grew up. And I remember her as someone, again, who didn't get out of bed very much, and she was just very frail. Until I learned a little bit more about her story long after she passed away, that she never was quite right when her firstborn son died while serving his country during World War II. That's my uncle. My middle name is James, and my uncle James, Edward Anton, was 23 years old when he lost his life in a B-26 Marauder bomber crash on September 3rd, 1942. I never met him. I was born in 1959, but I was given his name as my middle name. And I never quite understood that. My father did not have a middle name. I took my uncle's name as my middle name, and I never knew this. 4 pictures existed of him. That's it. And all I heard is that he died during World War II in a plane crash. That's it. I didn't know how, didn't know what was going on. I just had these pictures. And no one really wanted to talk about it. No one really knew a lot about it. Probably my grandmother, who passed away, probably knew the most, and she was saying the least. She never got over her grief. Fast forward to 2012, my good friend and my Voices for Vets co-host, Kim Lingling, she's an Air Force veteran, and she had some guidance and wisdom and info on how I can get some information about my Uncle Jim. And she helped me gain access to Uncle Jim's military records that had survived a fire in St. Louis. There's a building in St. Louis that stored a lot of the hard paper records of our World War II vets in particular. And there was a fire, I guess in the late 70s sometime, that took a wing of that building away, and a lot of those records were lost forever. My wife's father's records lost forever. But I did get 80 pages, copies of pages that were fire singed and smudged from carbon and dust. 80 pages that told me the story of my Uncle Jim from 1939 to 1942, his time in the United States Army, and then at the end of his life, the United States Army Air Corps. And I got to digging a little deeper and finding out a little bit more, reading these pages. Every promotion he had, every test he took, every physical he had. I'm thinking, wow, this is my uncle. We have a lot of the same kind of health things. And again, a man I never met, but I felt this connection to him. And it just reinforced me again to be this go-to guy in the family, because everybody wanted to know about Uncle Jim then. Sergeant James Edward Anton, U.S. Army Air Corps, died on September 3rd, 1942. I'm forever thankful that I get to carry on his name. I'm honored to tell his story. And again, my invitation to all of you younger people, be that go-to person in your family. Be that one that digs a little deeper. A lot of veterans sometimes do not like to talk about their service. Private, and that's certainly acceptable to just say, okay. But I found that when I started asking some questions, particularly of my pap before he passed away, he didn't say anything for years and years. A year before, it was like shortly before he died, and he died 5 years ago this February. He called me up, and my sister was saying, "Oh, he's starting to give stuff away. He's starting to give stuff away." We figured he was getting close to the end of his life. He called me up and said, "Come on down and see me. I've got a box of stuff I want to give you." And he never spoke about his time in World War II. He gave me a box of things that told the story. He said, "Bring a tape recorder because I'm forgetting things. So I don't want you to forget. I want you to pass this along." So I learned about his time as a tech sergeant, paratrooper, and glider crew member in World War II in the European theater. I also learned that he had shrapnel that he was still carrying around. I didn't know this. I learned about some horrible stories that he never told ever, and also some very, very funny stories that he said he never shared. And it was the best connection I had to him ever. And it was right before he passed. So I treasure that thought. And again, I invite you younger people, be that person, that go-to person that learns, absorbs all that material, and no matter sometimes the hard stuff, you may not get that information, but any information that we can pass along to future generations is wonderful. Start with just, what was a regular day like on the base when nothing happened? What kind of things happened when nothing happened? Talk about some downtime. But learn and appreciate as we thank them for their service. To the 400 plus that are buried here, may their memories be eternal. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, for taking the time to come here and speak with us today. We encourage every volunteer here today who places a wreath on a veteran's grave to say that veteran's name aloud and take a moment to thank them for their service to our country. It's a small act that goes a long way towards keeping the memory of our veterans alive.
I, Bob Eiler, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Army.
If your veteran was from the Army branch of service, please lay your wreath now.
I, Mike Pierce, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of all those who served and are serving in the United States Marine Corps.
If your veteran was a Marine, please lay that wreath now.
I, Ray Andell, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Navy.
If your veteran was a Navy member, please lay that wreath now.
I, Bob Moser, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Air Force.
If your veteran was a member of the United States Air Force, please lay that wreath now.
I, Dan Ferrari, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Coast Guard.
If your veteran was a member of the United States Coast Guard, please lay that wreath now.
I, Ed O'Malley, will lay a remembrance wreath in memory of those who served and are serving in the United States Merchant Marines.
If your veteran was a member of the Merchant Marines, please lay that wreath now.
I, Dave Adams, will lay a remembrance wreath in honor of 93,129 United States servicemen from all branches of the service whose last known status was either prisoners of war or missing in action. These individuals have never returned to their families and homes. We shall not forget you.
Okay. We, the auxiliary of Post 7842, would like to take a moment to thank you, the volunteers, VFW Post 7842, as well as Post 615 and Post 2006 for coming and laying of the wreaths with us today. All members of the community, as well as our sponsors, for supporting us in this endeavor. A few things before we conclude. There is, at the Dairy Queen in town, one of the semis from Wreaths Across America, part of the convoy that came down out of Maine, who happens to be a relative of my late husband. Him and his wife, Robin, live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but were fortunate enough to be part of the convoy. They were coming through this part of town and stopped so everybody could see what the trucks look like. So you're welcome to go over and have a look at it and maybe get your picture taken. Yes, yes. Okay. They're ready? 2006 Honor Guard.